Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Um, Welcome to the fourth webinar of the SparkPro series. I'm our Mathur and I'm a grade 7 student in Capna Wilson Public School in Oakville, Ontario. I'm the host for today. Often I'm asked, what do I want to be when I grow up? I always wonder, what are my options? And what do people do? What opportunities are out there? So this curiosity gave birth to SparkPro webinar series to spark ideas in all those curious kids like me to allow us and explore various careers. I'm thankful to all the volunteers who believe in this initiative and are giving their time to share their experiences and enlighten the next generation. Our speaker for today is Kartik Jayaraman. He's a producer in a video game company. In this webinar, he'll introduce us to his career path, what it takes to be a video game producer, as well as explain his day to day routine. He'll also explain the possible careers in a video game industry. Oh, and special shout out to Ira Jayaraman for introducing us to Kartik Jayaraman. Thanks a lot, Ira. But before we start, let's just set up a few ground rules. Um, this session will be recorded and posted on YouTube. And also, please keep your microphone on mute unless you're asking a question. If you have any questions during the session, you can type it in the comments and we will have a Q&A towards the end of the webinar. Alright, without any further ado, let's welcome Kartik. Thank you for volunteering to be SparkPro's speaker, Kartik. We are very excited to hear from you and thanks everyone for joining us today and hope you get to learn something new. Kartik, over to you.
Hey folks, good morning. First of all, thank you, Ara, for this initiative, and I hope I'll be able to spark some joy and interest in the video game industry with you kids and the parents who have joined. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I would like to share my screen so that you can see my presentation. Arav, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? All right, great.
It's all good.
Excellent. So, all right, excellent. So I just want to share quickly about careers in video games. Just talk to you about what is out there and what goes into making video games. Hopefully, the content is interesting and fun, and I've tried to keep it as generic as possible. So going forward, so first of all, a disclaimer, all the images and videos I've used in this presentation are sourced from the internet with Creative Commons license. Wherever available, I've credited the source. The images are obviously for educational purposes, and I do not claim any copyright on it. So going forward, I'll talk a little bit about me. So that's me. If you can't see the video, that is me over here. This was with a bunch of kids in Thunder Bay earlier this year when I went there to mentor them and talk to them about the video game industry. I'll talk a little bit about my career, about video games in general, what goes into producing video games, what are the different career path options in the industry, what do you need to study to get in the industry, as well as some questions. We'll have time for questions towards the end. So introducing myself, I did my engineering in Pune, India, many years ago, I think 21 years ago. And then after that, I started building engineering software. And what that is basically software for the mechanical engineering industry. So if people would be familiar with a software tool called AutoCAD, so I used to be a software developer for that. Essentially, it's a tool to create drawings which are used to create manufacturing, like tables, cars, like anything under the sun. You need some kind of detailed drawings for those before they go into manufacturing. And the software for that is AutoCAD. And I used to be a software developer in that industry for 9 years. And then video games happened when I was working in Singapore. I got interested in the industry, and someone was offering me a job there, and I took over and I started building games first as a programmer, and then as a producer in the last 7 years. And I'll talk about all those different things later in this presentation. I mostly built a video game called FIFA, which is a very popular game. I'm not sure if you have played it, but I know kids in my kids' soccer club back in Burnaby in BC were really excited to see me all the time because they thought that I worked for FIFA, and they were all really interested and excited about that game. So a very popular video game which I used to work on back in BC. Um, Going forward, I want to talk about a little bit about how I grew up playing video games. So back in the day, I did not have we did not have much of a big gaming culture at home. So, but I did play using the Atari back in the 80s. There's this game called Donkey Kong and Game and Watch. I did not have this console myself, but my cousin had it, and I was when I was Arav's age, I think I was playing this a lot during my summer holidays, much to the disappointment of my parents. But yeah, I mean, at that time, this was quite the rage. I do want to give a piece of advice. I mean, obviously, you want to play video games. It's a source of entertainment. But much like my parents said back then, and much like what I tell to my kid, we should always be responsible in terms of our entertainment and gaming time. There's problem solving. There is fun and entertainment, but you have to set limits to how much games you play. So back then, I used to play games on these kind of devices, as well as my dad got me a game which looked like this. It's Pong, and I had multiple different games on that console, which was fun. And then in my university days, there was a game. This is earlier FIFA, right? FIFA '95. When I was growing up in India, there was a magazine. I forget the name. It's called, I think, PC Magazine or something. It was basically a personal computer magazine, and oftentimes they would give a demo disc where you would play, where you would get games or pieces of software. And there was this demo of FIFA '95. And they had just two teams, USA and Russia, and we used to play that during our downtime in the university. We used to play that game a lot, and it was just two teams and playing it on PC with graphics which looks like this, and that was it was a lot of fun. And then I looked at FIFA '98 Road to World Cup, which was by far, I think, the most iconic game FIFA ever produced. Just want to play a quick video of that while I speak over it. By the way, the ESRB, I'll talk about that in a bit. So the thing about this game was, can you guys hear the audio from the video? Are you able to do that?
No.
Oh, okay, it's fine. Then it's not going to be okay. So the iconic part of this game was it was the first time it introduced songs and soundtrack and audio, and it was the World Cup year 1998. So we got really excited, and this was back in India, and the people India never plays football or soccer as we call it here, but just having that connection to the sport through this video game, I was so excited. But then I lost touch with video games for the next 10 years before I got my opportunity back in FIFA when I was in Singapore. And then I made these games, and if you look at progressively the graphics, which went from this was FIFA Online 2 in Korea, and then this is a game which I played, which I made as last as a programmer, which was a downloadable content, which was for the UEFA Euro tournament 2012. And the game I'm most proud of that I made was FIFA 17, which had a story mode. I won't play the video because you guys can't hear the audio through this. But the point I was trying to make is like this is a game I grew up playing in university, and then I got the opportunity to work on that game, which was really exciting. And I created some of these games in the FIFA series. So enough about me. I just wanted to like talk about like why do we want to work in the video games industry, right? Like what is there? Like obviously it's fun. It's games, and games are fun. But then to me, it is the perfect mix of art and engineering, where you're trying to like create fantastic art. Like look at this image on the left. This is from a game called Horizon Zero Dawn, which was built by Sony. One of my favorite games, where the hero is this character, Aloy. She's born in this world, in this futuristic world where the humans build all these machines, and machines take over, and Aloy and the humans are reduced back to tribes. And she's in this world and then she understands how to communicate back with the machines, and then how she helps her tribe regain the land, and surviving in that environment, and learning skills from that environment. So you're playing that kind of story, you're playing that fantasy, which is something you can't really experience in like movies or even storybooks. And this is a culmination of that simulation and fantasy, which you would want to like engage in at times, where you want to like figure out like what would happen in that case, how would I progress in that story. So it's a lot about like storytelling. It's a lot about problem solving. So, for example, she has to gather resources from this land to create and craft stuff and take on like big enemies, big giant monsters like the ones over here. And from the engineering aspect, like how do you create these huge beasts, and how do you show that on your computer? Like what does that take? How do these pictures show up on your computer screen? How do they animate? How do these clouds and this clear sky show up? How do these clouds form, and how does it rain, etc.? Like it's a simulation of almost a life which we know of, and also fantasy which we can just imagine in our dreams, and try to make that come to life is beautiful. So it's a perfect mix of like art and engineering as well as storytelling. And as you're playing games, you're solving problems within the game. And as game creators ourselves, we deal with like problems about how do we render all this content? How do we create all this content to show up on the machines which we have? Going next, I just want to talk about how to get started in games. I know a few of you must have used Scratch. My kid did it. He created this Fibonacci sequence in Scratch, which is it's a game where you can just press start and it'll go and create a lot of the numbers in the sequence of Fibonacci. So it's a good way to like kind of start on games. Then I was mentoring these kids from through Hughes Fusion, and they created this game called Below Zero, I'm just going to play a little bit of that. Can you guys still see my screen? Yeah, so it's created using Construct. So, I mean, these are games which are created using plug-and-play toys, right? So they just created the content through Construct, and it's very simple to use software. You can go and create games like this. So, for example, this guy, if he steps away from the heat, his energy bar goes low, so he has to stay next to a campfire, and then he has to like jump through all these, and then he gets achievements out here. So it's so easy and nice to create this, but it's a lot of fun just playing this game. And oh wait, I'm obviously very bad at this. And look at that, the snowman just having those animations. Uh, it is it is it is really simple to like create this and move ahead, and it's a fun pastime just to get this going and then play this game, right? I'm gonna get back to the presentation. Um, so to get started with these games, like you can go to Scratch, you can go to Construct, you can figure out what is involved in programming these games. How do you get the art, and how do you get animation to work? How do you get achievements? How do you reward the player back? So all those mechanics, it's very easy to get started with this. But obviously, they're not creating games like Horizon. So it's a little bit complex. So I just want to talk about elements of making games, right? So this is Pong. So Pong, a game like Pong or the games which I showed earlier, you can sit down, spend some time during the summer holidays and think about how do you want to create this, like an infinitely playing Pong. Um, and you can use Scratch or Construct to do that. But when we are making what we call AAA production titles, you need a little bit more than that. There are teams which have to create volumes of art, which whether it's characters like Aloy in Horizon, or a different character like maybe Batman or Spider-Man. When you create that character in the environments, like for example, the Spider-Man game had the entire city of New York. So you create all those buildings and those models, and levels. Levels are like, for example, in the Below Zero game, which I just showed, the challenges in when the hero is jumping around, um, and just creating those levels with all that art and providing that challenge to navigate that environment. You need art, you need design, which I did not mention here, but I'll talk about design later. Um, Animation, moving the characters. Narrative, you need writers to write a story, create that fiction. You need motion capture. Motion capture is something unique to video games, right? So, for example, in movies, you have actors who emote and you're capturing that from the camera. In video games, you need to convert that to animate using digital characters. So you do record that using motion capture, and then you take elements from that recording and digitize it, so that it gives this look and feel of the same actor you're familiar with, and the same actions, the same fluid body motions, and get that into the video game. Audio, a huge part. Like you need commentary in a game like FIFA. You need background audio for games to present that kind of an atmosphere. For example, if you're in a horror kind of game, you need to build audio to give that tension, that there is something going on that you need to escape or do something about. There's audio in terms of soundtrack. There's music which is captured. There is authentic audio which people go to lens to go and capture. So it's really a very big part of a video game industry. And then programming for sure. So how do we make all these digital art characters and model to show up on your computer screen or on your television screen, or wherever you're playing that. So you need an engine, which is like a much like the engine of your car, which kind of is the nuts and bolts of the game, holding things together. And then you have gameplay elements, which is elements built on top of the engine to enable gameplay. So, for example, a game called Pong, the gameplay is when I press the controller, the bat moves up or down, and then the ball, when it hits the bat, it should move in a certain direction. That's gameplay. There's physics. I mean, you need to know about how fast the ball is moving when it collides with that object. Which angle will it go to? So this is all your high school physics, which is really important in making games. And then you need tools which are not really games itself, but which enables the artist to produce content in the game. So you need tools programming as well. And there's much more. I'm just scratching the surface here, but there is much more in terms of the different kinds of game you're making, where you have specific needs of a skill set. And I kind of talked about what went there in this. So it's the same thing. So if you look at creating a character like Aloy, you'll find an actor who this is a real world actor who we take the headshots of, and then creating that skin, creating the look of the hair. So that's all goes into character art. And just detailing out all the like her dress and the way the weapon she's carrying, all that goes into like design and the art for Aloy. And then the environment, the terrain here. Look at the cacti and on all these biomes here, and the environment in the distance. So it's not. If you look at the camera pointing to this character, you will see the environment up front, close to the camera, at a different resolution than going like way back over here, because that's like real life, right? So then you need multiple details of that art style, because you can't have you only have those many resources in your computer to show this image. So everything cannot be at the same quality as the one which is close to the camera. So thinking about those problems, and then when the character moves, how do you make sure that the motion is in a sense that it's not choppy, it is fluid. So you have to keep on showing this on your computer screen at a specific rate, which we call frame rate. So how do you do that? So all those kind of challenges go into like making a AAA production game like Horizon. This is a game, by the way, I did not work on. I wish I worked on this, but it's a beautiful game. I think it is rated at the same level which you guys can play on, so that's why I put a picture of it.
Hey, Kartik.
I want to talk a little bit about.
Hey, Kartik.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, Kartik.
Yeah.
Our participant Arnav, he wants to talk about something he is doing, and he needs to leave. So can he please talk to you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. For sure. Is there a chat screen, or does he want to like talk?
Yeah.
I can pause my video.
No, that's okay.
Hey Kartik, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm Arnav. Thanks, Arav, for introducing me. So I'm doing this app development course right now, actually. So I've been thinking like a lot of times that kids have a lot of ideas, right? Like they want to make something, they have such an idea, but they're not able to implement it because they won't have enough like industry like money or anything to do it. So I was thinking of making an app where children or anyone could post like whatever they want, like ideas and stuff. And if any company is interested, they could like take it up and maybe try it out. So do you think it's a good idea?
I think games industry in general is it's something which is so creative, and there are so many people with their ideas and opinions, and we get a lot of ideas for sure. The game industry in general is based off that, right? It's like the simplest comparison I make between games and traditional software is um, traditional software is you know what you're buying. In games, everything is new and unique. It's like watching a movie, and everybody comes up with an idea for a game and a movie. And for sure, I mean, it's always encouraged to build up ideas. But I won't necessarily think in the terms of you won't have the necessary means to get your ideas to life. I mean, start off at a small level, right? I mean, use tools like Construct or Scratch to kind of iterate on that idea. So if more often than not, you don't need a final finished product to demonstrate your idea. What you need is the minimum tools to go ahead and play that. So I'll talk a little bit about that in game production as well. But just
Okay, thanks,
having an
Karthik.
idea. Yeah, you're welcome. Just having a list of ideas is sometimes okay, but maybe build a little bit more um, using the tools which you have available. And Scratch and Construct are basic ones, and then you can go ahead with like Unity and Unreal as well. And a lot of people do that. They create their demos, and there are game jams where people create playable demos, which then can get funded and taken on further. I can talk a little bit about what my current company does too, maybe later. Well, when we finish through this. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not.
I pretty much got my answer though. Like, yeah, you do need ideas, and yeah, I mean, if any like company doesn't have any product to make or anything, they could use these ideas or anything, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In games in
Okay.
general, there is no like. In general, there is no dearth of ideas. Like I'm pretty sure
Okay.
there are, but I think innovation is always encouraged, and when you come up with something
Okay.
as demos to demonstrate, it's always good.
Mm. So I
Um,
guess my dad was telling me or something. This is called crowd seeding or something like that. So yeah, I guess I could make that. So like I'm doing this course there. So yeah, and also the Fibonacci thing that you were saying about in Scratch, I also made this program where it's like you can enter the number you want still, like so it'll print the number of Fibonacci numbers still there, and also print the golden circle till there. So like you know
oh,
the squares, the size of squares, and also the spiral, right? Yeah. So it does
excellent,
that.
excellent.
That's awesome.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Karthik.
yeah.
So thanks,
Uh,
Arnav. Kartik, please continue. Thanks.
yeah, yeah. Cheers. So let me go back to this one. So elements of making games, we just talked about that. Um, so how does this all come together? Like there's just a lot of stuff which needs to go into making games. You need art, you need animation, um, you need narrative, audio, programming, and all that stuff. But these are all like uh, different skill set. How does that all come together into one cohesive unit to produce games? So that's what game production is all about, right? So we need to have all these different, and the way I look at it is like building Lego, or this is an example which people often give is like how do you measure an elephant? Like you take one step at a time, right? You need to come up with a concept. What Arnav mentioned, which is like an idea. So you need a concept like, hey, I need to make a game like Horizon where machines have taken over and humans are reduced back to like tribes, and they have lost touch with all science and reality, and they need to come up in this strange world where they need to organize themselves and come and communicate with the machines and take their lives back. So, okay, that's the concept. Now, how do you go about proving that? How do you make a game of that length? So, well, then you need to come up with like proving ideas. Like, okay, so all right, so this is a harsh world. So maybe we need the landscape to look like this. So the creative people will imagine that nature has taken over. There are no remnants of buildings because the machines have all demolished that. So it's all natural landscape. And then, but we still have these machines because they need to go and live somewhere, and they look like these almost like dinosaurs. Okay, so those are, again, we are looking at ideas. So how do you construct that kind of machine? So then the programming teams will come together and say, okay, we have this engine which is available. We'll add these different elements in this engine. And an engine is like, Scratch and Construct is at the base level, but you have engines like Unreal or Unity. And there are proprietary game engines which game companies have. And then they will work with the art teams to like create that playable slice of, hey, this is one character, Aloy. She can go around this world, gather these elements and craft these weapons, and she can communicate with the machines in this way. And that's one playable slice of the game to prove it out. So, and that's when we talk about like funding. So every studio then within the game industry, they come up with this like kind of demo, and then they come up with like, hey, we need funding to expand on this. And that's when you start expanding the game. You create multiple characters, you create multiple levels, you polish that towards the end, and and then you take it to multiple reviews with industry experts within the company who have shipped multiple games. And then they kind of give feedback, and then you iterate on that, and then you polish it further, and then you get to release the game. So there's a lot of steps which goes inside game production to orchestrate all this together to make one like cohesive game. And I want to talk a little bit about like what are the different areas and what do you need, what people need to learn to do this different things. So, for example, for programming and engineering, some of the key things required are like 3D geometry and linear algebra. So some of you would learn this in middle school and then progress into high school, but this is absolutely essential and important because games are in a 3D simulation. So you need to understand 3D geometry. Like if a camera is facing an object, what the camera is going to see. The camera rotates over here. What is the camera going to see? If the object moves, well, what is the camera going to see, etc., etc. So all those concepts about 3D geometry, linear algebra for sure. I mean, you need to know about vectors, specifically for motion. If a character is moving in this direction and looking this way, how far the character would go. Collision for physics. You have buoyancy of a boat on water, like how will it go up and down. So you need to have those. You need to have sharp understanding of physics and math if you're in programming. You to actually implement programs, you need to know programming languages. So if you're making AAA production games, mostly they are made in C++. Some games are made in Java too, but C++ is primarily the language used for programming games. At gameplay level, there are some scripting languages which are used. People use a slightly reduced form of C++. So there is things in game engines like Unreal, which are called blueprints, which are more like logical blocks, similar to like Scratch. Um, and then if you're making mobile games, you need to know Java or Swift or some of the other languages which are used for in Android and iOS development. Um, and then there are game engines which you need to get familiar with. There are industry these game engines are free and available, like Unreal and Unity are free. You can go right now, and I have some links towards the end of this presentation where you can go and actually explore that and make some demos yourself, and understand like how those game engines work. And this is really useful if you're pursuing a career in programming or even art, and I'll talk about art later. And then you specialize into like certain different kinds of like programmers. Like graphics is a whole special thing. You need to have an extremely strong understanding of 3D geometry, but you also need to know about how do you optimize stuff to be for the game to be performing well. You have physics programmers who deal with physics, which I talked about. There's tools and gameplay. Technical art is basically the bridge between art and programming. So essentially creating pipelines to get the art in the game. And then design. Design is it's very abstract. The design is the most creative part of the video game industry. So you need to have a good understanding of game genres. Like if it's a racing game, you understand about what goes behind building racing games. What are people interested in? I'm just keeping a quick look at the time. And then what goes into a role playing game? So if people have played tabletop role playing games, you would know. Like it's about the story. It's about how do you upgrade your character? How do you level up? What goes into progression of a game? How do you reward the player? There's also a lot about narrative design and storytelling. Like, what's the fiction behind this? Is this a survival horror? Is this a game where I'm in this like Horizon? I keep going back to Horizon. Or is this a game like Spider-Man? You're in New York. You're a kid who suddenly becomes Spider-Man, and then what's the story behind it? Who are the bad guys? How does Spider-Man navigate through the environment? What's the story over there? And then there's a lot about economics and monetization as well. So imagine the game is a simulation of the real world. So and there is if you go back to like board games, right? I mean, if you're playing Catan or Monopoly, there is a concept of resources where you're kind of gathering resources, and then you spend those resources to gain some other things. So how do you manage the resource of this world, the resource pool of this world? So and then how do you balance that so that the game is fun? So it's not too hard to get resources, but it's also balanced in the sense that you are able to spend that to get something. So design needs a lot of like a broad knowledge of different things, and also a very very sharp focus on like how to make the game fun for playing. So a lot of design people come from gamers, people who QA games, like who test games. A lot of designers come from programming as well, who are really interested in game design, besides being a programmer. And then there's art. Arts, like we talked about earlier, and I'm not an artist myself, but I know it's the creative process in building art is it takes a lot of effort, as well as you need to have that creativity within yourself to like think about different kinds of scenarios. So creating a model like Aloy, and what looks good on that character. what would how would we place lights in the environment so that the character and the environment are focused? How does the shadows play their part? Then there are different levels of art as well. Like you talk about concept art when you're starting the game, you want to create some concepts to kind of get funding, and then there's art inside the game, and then working with programming teams to kind of have assets in a specific way so that it shows up in the database correctly. I'm actually checking time. I'm at 11:45 almost, so I'll just breeze through this. What do you need to study? So I think we talked about a little bit about that for engineering, computer science. I did not study computer science myself. I did electronics and communication, but you can do something which you if you're good if you have good understanding of writing programs. That is important. Math, you need to be good in your high school math. And then look at game engines. Like they are available, they're online, they're free. You can download them, you can create games on it. I think that's just a willingness to be interested in games is key in terms of engineering. Art and design, there are game art and design courses. There are tools like 3ds Max, Maya, ZBrush. Blender is free. You can download Blender. You can create 3D models in it, and you can import them into the game engines and animate characters. So that's really good. There are other jobs like creative writing. You need or narrative. You need audio. There's much more which I haven't listed here. Project management is also there. I mean, games have like I used to be a programmer, and now I'm a producer, which has which is like which project management is one part of production. So you can study all these things. There's some more resources here. I think Scratch is obviously, you guys know about that. Construct Tree is really good. Unreal and Unity, I've put links over here. They are freely available game engines. Blender is a freely available 3D modeling package. There are some conferences you can go and hear from the developers. GDC Vault. GDC is a conference called Game Developers Conference, which happens every year. It didn't happen this year, obviously, because of COVID. I think they've scheduled it in August now. Which there are some free conferences which they've put in GDC Vault. You can go and check those out, where game developers talk about their experience about building games. ACM SIGGRAPH is also a YouTube channel where if you're interested in graphics programming, you can get a lot of good content here. And in terms of future challenges, I'll just talk a little bit about virtual reality. This virtual reality is you have these VR games where you essentially you wear this headset and you are transformed into like basically the physical environment where you have all 6 degrees of freedom, where you can move around, interact with the environment, etc. Those are that's making that more mainstream, making that more inclusive and more. Because essentially, when you're wearing a headset and you're in that environment, you are away from people, which is a challenge. We want to have them to be social. So how do you do that? Streaming, it's actually, I can show you this. So this is Google Stadia, which is like a streaming platform. Essentially, what happens with streaming is the game is run in a computer which is on the cloud, and you are essentially playing a video like Netflix, where the input is taken and the input is run on the machine on the cloud. So the biggest advantage of streaming is it makes you play games on like anywhere. You don't really need a computer or a console. You can play it on your phone. You can play it while you're on the bus. Then there are esports where there are gamers who would be playing real world sports or or having gaming tournaments, and I'm sure you must have known about that. Yeah, I think we are a little bit over, so I just want to quickly end with any questions and give you guys time to talk to me about like what do I do and etc. etc. Over to you, Arav.
Okay. Thanks, Karthik. This is an amazing presentation. So you'll be taking questions now.
I'm gonna just pause, stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anybody from the participants has any questions, can you please use the raise hand option? To ask the question. I can see that John. I can see that John is raising his hand. John, can you please unmute and ask your question?
So, like, how do you come up with ideas when you make a game?
That's a really difficult question. How do you come up with ideas? Some of the games are based on previous games, so you just build upon previously shipped games. But when you're coming up with like a very new game, you take inspiration from various different places, right? You take inspiration from pop culture, like what is going on in the real world. You take inspiration from books which you have read, or for example, if you've read a lot of fantasy books like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson, you want to create a world which takes the player to a different fantasy land. So you come up with those kind of ideas. Ideas about game mechanics are really really interesting. Like, and also like some of the ideas you could come up with, but it may not be easy to build games using that idea. So ideation is one thing, but getting it into life, into a physical game is the next challenge. So I think ideas in general is that you take inspiration from things around you, as well as you have dreams and you think about different things happening in a dream. You take inspiration from that too. Yeah.
Thanks. So we have a question in the chat from Shaurya Mathur. Shaurya, do you want to speak? Do you want to ask the question yourself? If you do, please unmute. Oh, okay. So
okay, I read the question. So he's pursuing Shaurya is pursuing graphic design in undergrad, and how can he get into the gaming industry? So if you're pursuing graphic design, I think that's key for the art job family. Any kind of creation of graphics in video games, we need graphic designers for sure. They also depends on how if you're creating 3D art or if you're creating 2D graphic design. There's for 2D graphic design, we also have user interface, UI design, usability, with the marketing materials. Those also are important for video games. But within a game, if you're pursuing graphic design, I would recommend you to take courses in 3D graphics and how to create 3D media. That is really key. And how to get into the industry? There are a lot of so my company also does like university programs where we have sessions with the universities where we take co-op we take co-ops to come and join us in the art and programming teams as well as production teams. So that is a way to get into the industry. The other thing is there are these challenges which some companies do too. I know Epic does that. My company does it, where it's essentially a contest where you're given a particular theme to create your 3D content, your UI content, or your programming content. And then winners of those generally get hired too. And then there's you can apply as well. Like we always welcome applications from graduates. John's asking, have you ever made a virtual reality game? Unfortunately, no. I would love to. I have a virtual reality development kit which I purchased last year, and much to the chagrin of my wife, it's kept in the it's kept in my cupboard. I haven't used it for a year, so I think when I get time, I'll definitely make. Are there any virtual internships available? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I recommend. So within your country, within India, we do have like Ubisoft is based in India. We have the company I work for. We have 2 studios in Pune and Bombay, Mumbai. And then there are other gaming companies in India as well. So there are lots of opportunities over there. Gaming is a big part in India. About getting bigger in India. So I'm pretty sure they do have like physical internships. It's hard to do like a virtual or remote internships or remote co-op programs because because of the time difference but more often than not as a co-op you get the maximum benefit by being in the environment and learning from the teams around you. So you need to be there. But I'm pretty sure there are opportunities in India in gaming. It wasn't there when I was growing up there, but right now. I work for Ubisoft. I can just put it there.
Okay. So I have a few questions. Just last few. So what games have you worked in? Like, what games have you helped make?
I have made a lot of different versions of FIFA. So I've shipped about 10 games, 10 versions of FIFA. And I'm currently working on a game which I can't really talk about. So it's top secret. Sorry.
And also, what is Blender? Like,
Blender is a 3D modeling tool. So essentially, you can create 3D art in Blender. So some of the characters which you saw, you could create there. Any kind of environments within the game, you can use Blender to create that. So it's a free to use tool. It's open source. I'm not sure if it's open source, but maybe it is. But it's free to use. It's a good alternative. For some of the other programs are paid, so you have to pay to buy licenses for those.
thanks. So we don't have any more questions, and we'll just wrap up. So thanks a lot, Kartik, for such insightful information. And it was awesome, and also your presentation was amazing. I really loved it. and I'll share the presentation with all our participants today. So I would also like to thank everybody who participated today. You've been a wonderful audience, and thanks for being part of the SparkPro community. I hope you're all enjoying these webinars, and please let me know if you're curious about any careers that you would like to learn about, or if you know anybody who would like to present. Also, please let me know if you have any ideas on how to invite more participants to join this series. We will have more webinars, so stay tuned and please register to get the latest information. The registration is in the chat below. Right? Yeah. Oh. Sorry, just a second. Let me show the link. So, second of all, okay, this is it. That's what we need.
If John wants to talk, John has a question. Maybe we'll take one last.
Yeah. John?
Well, I play Zelda after a while. So in that game, sometimes it's like a voice as if the character is speaking. So is that voice a real person's voice, or like how do you get that?
So yeah, that's a really good question. So we do voice recording. So essentially, within audio, we invite voice artists who would come and record their voice, and then we take that and put that in video games. So I think that happens. It's not machine generated.
Okay. Thanks. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is also in the chat. I wish you have a wonderful weekend, and thanks everyone. Have a good weekend, and see you in the next webinar. Until then, stay safe and stay home. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.